The Boy and the Beast is the latest film from one of my favorite anime directors working today, Mamoru Hosoda. The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Summer Wars, and Wolf Children are also some of my favorite animated films, so he has a lot to live up to in terms of staying on the level of those films. Does his latest film do that? Well, not exactly. In fact, I would say this is my least favorite film of his to date. That doesn't mean it's a bad film, but this doesn't quite mean it reaches the level of his previous films. Visually, The Boy and the Beast is phenomenal, and easily one of the sharpest and cleanest looking hand-drawn animated films I've seen. The big standout for me was the use of their overall tone of the setting in different scenes, the dark browning atmosphere of the city to the bright and colorful world that Ren arrives to later on. I've always liked Hosoda's art style in his films, especially how he draws his characters, and here he continues to always impress. Though the visuals are fantastic, the film does lack quite a bit of the other end of the spectrum. That is the story aspect and all of the other little branches that surround it. From the originality to the film, to the characters being one-dimensional, and all the consequences of lacking weight to all those aspects. I really was surprised at what was missing in the film because every single one of Hosoda's films prior not only had these aspects but delivered them on every level. The film starts off as The Cat Returns, but then turns into Naruto about halfway through. I can see that this wanted to distinguish itself from Spirited Away, but I would say that it would have benefited from going in those directions. It all follows with what the big problem with the film is. That is, it tries to be too much that it needs to be, taking elements from other stories without really establishing its own. The story feels lacking and unoriginal. Because of that, you can easily see where the influences come from. Most movies tend to cover this up with very interesting, well-developed characters that suck you into the story. The Boy and the Beast lacks some of that, which affects the film the most of any aspect. One-dimensional characters are not a bad thing, but when they are clearly set out to change or have interactions that expect you to feel like they have changed isn't there, they come off as hollow and uninteresting. Ren and Kumatetsu are both established as not being the most likable characters at the start of the film, but them meeting each other immediately, they have a dynamic. It isn't the most positive dynamic, but at the beginning I was assuming that by the end of the film that would change. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen as the story just skips to a few years later when Ren is older, but the dynamic between him and Kumatetsu hasn't changed much at all. The second half of the film is where I began to feel like this idea was going in the wrong direction, and the setup in the first half was just a missed opportunity. Instead of keeping the film a small and light story, just focusing on Ren as a young boy and his growing relationship with Kumatetsu as a sort of father figure, but the film ditches all of this to focus on Ren's reconnecting to the human world, creating a new conflict with himself as whether or not he wants to start a normal life again. If this doesn't sound familiar, then rewatch Wolf Children to refresh your memory. Again, this is what makes me so conflicted with this story, as it very clearly wants to be its own thing but doesn't want to go in the direction it needs to go to even do that. This doesn't help as the story devolves to a very by-the-numbers plot where Ren now needs to save the city from a generic monster thing that was created by the antagonist equivalent of Sasuke from Naruto. A lot of emotion is expected from this audience as the film relies on flashbacks to previous scenes in the film, specifically between Ren and Kumatetsu. Once again, the problem with doing this is that you haven't seen much change between their dynamic. I am okay with Kumatetsu staying the same one-dimensional character because that was really how he was established in the beginning, a selfish loser. But Ren, on the other hand, he was established as someone who has lost everything, and by meeting Kumatetsu, it was supposed to be something he gained that grew him and shaped the person he becomes. Instead, Ren is just a younger kid in an older body after the flash forward. I really felt that the forced love subplot was unnecessary and didn't need to be in this film. Again, we have seen this done better in another Hosoda film. This also carries over with the revenge jealousy's villain's plot that enters out of nowhere and is resolved with little tension. It is supposed to mimic what Ren could have become, but based on the character's actions, it would have made more sense that he'd be taken in that direction. Also making for a more interesting story, somewhere to the fact that Ren has to face why his emotions and the way he is has been since he was a child. The Boy and the Beast is a film that I can't help but be very critical of because the previous works of Mamoru Hosoda are some of the best animated films I've ever seen. This is a film that is still an enjoyable experience, but unfortunately isn't one that I would return to very often. It's a good one-time to watch, but I would always choose some of other Hosoda's previous works before I would even consider watching this again. That being said, I still will continue to look forward to anything this director does next, and I'm already looking forward to his next film. So what did you think of Boy and the Beast? Have you seen the film, and what is your favorite Mamoru Hosoda film? Leave your comments down below and see you on the next video.